I flew to Nashville. I'd never been. Flew to Nashville with a stack of resumes. This probably wouldn't happen these days. And I walked up and down Music Row with my resumes and knocked on doors and ended up getting 3 job offers.
You grew up in Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Pittsburgh, Kansas is the southeast corner of the state. It's about 2 hours straight south of Kansas City, right on the Missouri line. So it's an area called the four state area, right on Missouri. We're about 30 minutes from Oklahoma and not far from Arkansas as well. So up there, my dad was, there was a university there, is a university there. My dad taught there. So that's why we were located in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Yeah.
Gotcha. But you went to Mizzou.
I did. Yes, I got a lot of grief to cross the border into Missouri. But yes, loved my time at Mizzou. It was about a 4-hour drive from Pittsburgh, and was a journalism major there. They have a great J school, what they call it. And yeah, really grateful for my time there. And really, I have one of my professors, one of my advertising professors, was pivotal in encouraging me to move to Nashville. So there's a Mizzou link being in Nashville. Yes.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And your family is pretty musical, right?
Yes, very. I mean, from the time I was born, there was music in the house. My dad was a professor of woodwinds and taught clarinet, saxophone, and flute. My mom is a flutist. So there was always music playing in the house, all different kinds of music. And they were also in the orchestra pits a lot of times in the summer for summer theater. And I started participating, and they would drag me to the rehearsals. I finally said, hey, can I audition for these musicals? So did a lot of that growing up. And then yes, my grandfather, my mom's dad, was a violinist and played with the CBS Orchestra in New York. So lots of music.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of music.
Yeah.
How many instruments do you play?
Well, I have played 4 instruments. I play 2 instruments. So I grew up playing piano, and I still do play some piano. And guitar is my main instrument. I did play flute, and I played a tiny bit of mandolin, but guitar and piano, mostly guitar.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about becoming a songwriter.
Yeah.
And your professor encouraged you to move to Nashville.
Yeah.
Did you grow up writing songs and performing songs? As a kid, talk me through that process.
Yeah, Jimmy. So music was always in the house, and took piano lessons for many years. And I'd say when I was maybe in 7th or 8th grade, kind of started making up songs. I mean, and I think I was probably making up songs before that in my head, just not with music. But yeah, I was writing little songs on the piano. And I didn't ever think about, I was a kid from Kansas. I had never been exposed to that songwriting was a career, but I continued to do it. I entered a few contests when I was in high school, and then I got to college, and honestly, I was too busy writing papers to write songs. I did some singing in college, but it wasn't until I moved to Nashville that I discovered that songwriting was actually a career. So, yeah.
So what did you want to do? And so did you move to Nashville to become a songwriter, or did you come to Nashville to become an artist?
To become an artist and be in the business in some way. But yes, so when that professor encouraged me to move, I had this PR firm in Kansas City, Missouri, waiting to hire me. They had offered me a job, but Nashville was tugging at me. I'd been working at a country radio station on my summers home from college, and really just fell in love with the genre, and was singing, and I knew enough that I couldn't just show up to Nashville and get a record deal. So I thought, well, if I could get a job in the business and learn, get my feet on the ground, get to know people, then maybe I can do this recording artist thing. And so I flew to Nashville. I'd never been. Flew to Nashville with a stack of resumes. This probably wouldn't happen these days. And I walked up and down Music Row with my resumes and knocked on doors and ended up getting 3 job offers. And I walked into the CMA building. There was a man there at the time who I'd written to, because it was kind of before email was really a thing. And he had helped me, give some company names, some references. And so I went in to thank him. And he wasn't there that day, but the CMA folks were so nice to me. Again, I don't know if this would happen now. They said, well, would you like a tour of the building? So they walked me through the CMA building, and someone overhears me saying that I'm looking for a job. And they said, oh, well, there's a music publishing company down the street by the name of Collins Music, and they're looking for a receptionist. Tell them we sent you, and here's who you call. So that was one of the 3 job offers I got, and that was ultimately the job I took. And all of a sudden, it was a music publisher. They had about 12 songwriters on staff, and that is how I discovered that songwriting was a career. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Imagine, what were the other 2 job offers?
One was with a manager to kind of just be an assistant to the manager, and the other one was with I don't know if the company was called this, but there used to be a contest, the True Value Country Showdown. I don't know if you.
Okay.
But it was
I don't remember that.
Sponsored by radio stations, and they were based in Nashville, and so those were my 2 other job offers. Yeah, to work for them.
So imagine, what I always like to look back at my life and think about these small things that impact my life. The big things are marriage and babies and graduations and all that, but it's those small things that can have just as much of an effect on you. And imagine had you picked one of the other 2 jobs.
I've thought about that, Jimmy. I've thought about that, and what my trajectory, what would it have been? So I'm very grateful it worked out how it did. It did.
Yeah,
it was my education into songwriting, to be put right into that.
Right. And so when did you start actually writing songs?
So once I got here and got that job, and kind of, I was just like on fire for songwriting. And so I was just inspired to start writing. And so I started taking guitar lessons, because at that point I played maybe 3 chords on the guitar, not much. Started taking guitar lessons, and through that guitar teacher started met some of her other students. We were all, aspiring songwriters. And that's when I began co-writing, which was something foreign to me before moving to Nashville. I'd only written on my own. So co-writing, and was doing that. We all had day jobs, so we would meet, in the evenings and start writing. So that was, pretty soon after moving here, I started really, focusing in on that, and then was here. I was in Nashville for 3 years, almost to the date, from when I moved to Nashville to when I was able to pivot to the creative side and sign my first publishing deal.
Wow. So how'd that come about? Tell me about that. Publishing is such a hard thing to describe. It's such a complicated thing. But so tell me how you got your first publishing deal.
Yeah, so there's no straight line quite to it. It's this winding road. I was expanding my circle by playing writers' nights and meeting other writers. And at one of the writers' nights I played, I was approached afterwards by a publisher. He liked some of my songs and wanted to meet with me. And that was the first time that I had a sit-down meeting with the publisher, started writing with, signed writers. And then from there, my circle expanded even more. And through those signed writers, I was meeting anyway, one of those signed writers said, well, are you affiliated with a performing rights organization? And I said, yes, I'm with BMI, but I don't really have a person. I don't have a contact there. And they said, oh, you need to call Perry Howard. And Perry Howard was at BMI at the time, and go meet with him. And so I met with Perry and played him some songs, and Perry must have felt that I was ready to take more meetings, because he picked up the phone and called 3 publishers on my behalf. One of those was Jim Catino at DreamWorks, and ultimately that's who I ended up signing with. Of course, there was a course period there, writing with their writers and all of those things. But yeah, it was really, through a co-writer introducing me to someone at BMI, and then BMI introducing me to my publisher. So, yeah.
That would be that's a good path to take to get to a publishing deal, is sign with a PRO, and you know, if they fully believe in your chops, they're going to introduce you to some publishers. And that's really interesting. I love Jim. Jim's a good dude.
Oh, he's great. He's great.
I guess let's talk about the first time you got a song cut.
Oh, yeah.
So 3 years in to you're staying in Nashville, your life in Nashville. You got a real gig. You make it to the point where you sign a publishing deal, so you get an advance or whatever. It allows you to stop that day job and focus on songwriting. How long from that point did it take to actually get your first cut?
It was a couple years, at least. Those first couple years pretty quiet. You know, in your building, you know, I was learning. I mean, of course, I wanted that first publishing deal so badly, but I remember feeling like, oh, I'm not ready. And then you start getting in rooms with the real pros, and you just start learning so quickly. So yeah, I'd say it was maybe 2.5, 3 years, maybe. Wow, I don't know, but yeah, at least 2 years. And it was with a band that producer Mark Bright was producing. They were called Malibu Storm. And kind of a bluegrassy, they were siblings. And I remember I knew Mark a bit, and he was so kind. I ran into him at a publishing company. He says, oh, you need to come to my office. I want to play you the cut. So it was a neat way to get to hear that first cut in the producer's office, you know. Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. You know what, you're really reiterating a known fact in Nashville. That's about relationships, you know, and you know, your journey is very unique. However, you came here, you knocked on doors. You know, I mean, that's kind of what Martina did. You know, Martina McBride was like, she sent like a tape out to, a tape to all the record labels, and you know, it made it to the right person. You know, do you remember the first song you heard on the radio that you wrote?
Oh, I do. Yes. So this was probably my second cut. And it was with Restless Heart, and they were doing a reunion album. Larry Stewart was back as the lead singer, and of course I love Restless Heart. And they had cut something, and it became their single. And I had been trying like heck every time I was in my car, you know, trying to hear the song, could not for the life of me ever catch the song in Nashville. And then I happened to be in LA visiting a friend, and we're driving down the freeway in LA, and it comes on. And so I just laughed that I had to go all the way to the West Coast to hear it. But it was a really fun moment to be with a good friend, and we got to celebrate. So yeah.
Amazing. What's the name of the song?
It's called Feel My Way to You.
That's awesome.
Yep, wrote it with Danny. Yep.
Who did you write it with?
Danny Orton. Yeah, we wrote many songs together over the years. Yeah.
And so now, fast forward to today, and you know, how many? So I've heard other songwriters talk about how many songs they write in a year.
Yeah.
How many do you write in a year? And I've heard also that your hit rate, meaning songs that actually get cut, is pretty low, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a minute, just the business of songwriting.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting thing because it's about quality. It's about quality, but it's also about opportunity. And there are a lot of opportunities. And so, you know, I'm not going to pass up a great opportunity to get in a room with some fabulous people because I'm like, well, I've written too many songs. So I'm a worker. I like to be working. I have told this to several people recently. It's like in the last year, in my mind, I thought, oh, I better wrote around 80 songs. And then when I went back and counted, it was a lot more than that. It was like 140 songs. And then I kind of said, oh, no, that's too many. But again, opportunities, when they present themselves, you gotta be present to win. You gotta show up, and a day in the room gets you, you gotta show up. You also have to have time to work on great ideas, because that's the foundation of a good song. You've gotta have your tank filled up, so there's not, I think there's a right or wrong. Everybody has a different method on how, some people are only going to write a couple times a week. some people to write 5 times a week or write multiple times a day. I can't, those multiple times a day, I can't usually do unless it's just a finish of a song that just my mind doesn't capacity. But again, those opportunities, you got to be present, got to be present.
Yeah. The more swings you take, right?
Exactly.
The more hits you're going to have. So you've gotten several cuts from Tim McGraw.
Yes. Yeah. Very great.
And was he your first number one?
He was. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've also written some Christian stuff as well, right?
I have had a couple.
Francesca Battistelli.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And so, but country's your main, right? Have you thought about other genres, or do you just stick with country and, you've had this a couple cuts in the Christian side?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely the vast majority of what I'm writing is for the country market, but I love all kinds of music. It's like what fills me up, what I'm listening to at home is not necessarily always country. Occasionally there's some pop opportunities or kind of the, alternative folk genre sync. I love writing all of it. It's fun to kind of be able to color outside the lines of what a typical maybe country song would be. I think creatively it's good to stretch ourselves that way.
So you mentioned something that's super interesting and kind of unknown is the sync world. Do you do a lot of sync writing?
I don't do a lot of it. I would like to do more. I have I've had a few things placed in TV shows, and that's always an exciting a thrill. I do have some friends that have gotten heavily involved in it, and as a creator, I love that concept of it. You might be target writing, you might be kind of writing specifically for something, or it's sometimes writing very vague, right? Instead of country, which is very specific, it's writing something that's, just not as specific, kind of vague. So yeah, it's I'd like to dabble in that more. Yeah.
That's great. So, couple more questions. What inspires you, or or have you been surprised by something that has inspired you? Because when you're writing so many songs, how do you keep from having writer's block, I guess is the question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, it's just always kind of having that radar on, because for me, I never know where the idea is going to come from. I mean, I do know when I travel kind of, I may not consciously come up with ideas while I'm traveling, but it opens it up for me. I feel like when I return from travel, I'm more creative. I like to read a lot and, movies. But to me, sometimes the best idea may come from a conversation, or you hear somebody say something, or sometimes I know it's weird, it just drops out of the air. Sometimes I'm just noodling on the guitar and words just come, and it's just a wonderful thing that is just a blessing, so it's
right.
But yeah, I think, as a younger writer, I would panic. I'm out of ideas. I'm never going to have a good idea. And, that's just not true. And at this point, there's always, through conversation, and the beauty of co-writing too is, you may come in with an idea that you see one way, and you bring it to your co-writers, and they have this whole other concept that makes it so much more, so much stronger. So yeah, lots of ways to be inspired. Co-writers always inspire me.
I'm always interested to hear from songwriters, lyrics or melody, or what comes first?
What comes first? I mean, it's kind of this magical thing. I mean, concepts always have kind of titles. Those are always kind of floating around. It sometimes is at the same time, and I know that's very strange, but it's, if you have an idea, sometimes the idea kind of dictates, and it almost comes at the same time. Now, worked with a lot of producers, and there may be a track, they may have a track pulled up, and that kind of sets the tone. But again, it's this, I don't know. It's just this magical thing. It's kind of hard to explain.
Right.
I would say usually it's either going to happen at the same time, or the music's going to kind of start and dictate how the lyric falls into it. It's very rare that I've done the lyric and then put music to it, if that makes sense.
Got you. Yeah, makes sense. So last question, advice you would give to, one, to a young Jenn Schott, and then just a young songwriter. What would your advice be?
Yeah, well, I think, everybody says this, but it sounds very cliche. It's important to network. And what I mean by network is just be out and we talked about it's relationships, right? It's those relationships. But ultimately, and this is what I always tell young writers, is what is going to move your career forward is your music. So keep writing. It's like keep showing up and keep writing. That no matter how much you network, if the music's not there, it's not there. So just keep showing up and trust your gut. It's take in feedback, be a student, but ultimately you're the creator. It's a subjective thing we do, and trust your gut in those songs. Yeah.
Right.